UTM folks, we always see the serious side of professors, but if you want to experience the fun side of them, check out Humans of UEC. Hello everyone, I'm Safwan Hossain, an academic associate of the Undergraduate Economics Council, University of Toronto, Mississauga. Today we are launching a project with the mission to unite the economics community at our university. And our first guest is a very special guest. It's Professor Weisbrod. He did his PhD from Brown University and his postgraduate from London School of Economics and Political Science. As an economist, he specialized in development economics. His professional work focused on market power, energy economics, and urbanization. He served as an international growth center and country economist for IGC Myanmar. Over that, he managed country programs for Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan. Before joining the IGC, Professor Aaron worked as an economics consultant specializing in energy and competition economics. In this context, he helped research and prepare economics papers for cases in front of various European national regulators as well as the European Commission. Professor Aaron Weisbrod, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me.
How's it going for you?
Good. For those of you who don't know, it's like near the end of September. The semester's in full swing. All the classes are going. This is actually the first year post-COVID. So we have full classes, lots of students around. It's been a wonderful time to be back on campus.
Beautiful. So today we're gonna just go through different questions. It starts with short questions, and then we're gonna go through some story questions, and lastly we'll ask you for some helpful advice for the students of this university.
Awesome.
So my first question is a historical question. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you do again? Like something that you regret you did, you do it differently.
Yeah, so I'm not going to give out dirt on myself and specific things, but I think when I think back to my 18-year-old self, one of my great regrets, for example, was letting my French lapse.
Mm-hmm.
I used to speak kind of good French coming out of high school. I never really kept it up. And I think more generally, if I could go back in time, be like, hey, 18-year-old Aaron, I'd say, spend your time a little bit more wisely. I'd say be bold, be productive, take risks, because 18 is the time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You have the time to find things you're interested in and really go for it. Now, everybody should spend time working on their mental health. Sometimes people should spend time watching Netflix. That is fine. Also relax. But it's also an opportunity to try out new things, do things you've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the freedom to fail when you're 18, when you're 22, anywhere when you're an undergrad. And so use that. Take advantage of that.
Beautiful. What's the most valuable thing you learned as an economist so far?
Yeah. And so this is going to be hard because it's always ironic to claim you had this. But when I finished my master's, I became an economist. So I really thank you very much for your introduction. I was an analyst as a consultant, and then I worked supporting some country programs with the IGC. And I think one of the big things I learned as an economist through that time was really humility. You learn a lot of stuff in college, and it's really exciting, hopefully, right? I hope everyone who's listening to this is taking classes and they enjoy, they really challenge them. And you learn a lot about how the world works. And then you go out in the world, and you're kind of gung-ho, you're ready to go. But the stakes are higher. If you're working on cases that affect firms' profitability, their bottom line, you're working on things that, with a ministry in a country that actually might turn into policy, the stakes are a lot higher than doing an assignment. And so I learned a lot that maybe I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And so ironically, my time as an economist didn't teach me a ton about economics, though it did. But really the first thing it taught me was humility, to be mindful of what you know, you don't know. And, don't think you know everything, just be willing to learn. That's a lot of what I got out of that time.
So it's never enough. You always have to keep yourself open to new concepts, and you're a lifelong learner all the time, no matter how professionally expert you become on your field.
I think that's right? You will always be a lifelong learner. And so part of that was to learn that I had much more to learn. And also to be mindful of your limitations, right? So I think it's really important to know that you could be really smart, you could be really well educated, you could be really qualified, and still not know something. And that's fine. Just go learn that thing. And so it's important to be, it's important and it will make you a better worker, a better collaborator, to be honest and say, I don't know this, but here's what we would need to know this. Here's what I could go learn. It's an important skill.
Amazing. If you could go back in history and meet one person, who would it be?
Yeah, this is a hard one. I'm cognizant that there's no right answer here. It's hard to think about a historical person that I want to meet, especially because so many of them turn out to be different people than we learn they are. But if I could, I guess, go back in history, I would love to go back 20 years. There's a development economist called Amartya Sen, won a Nobel Prize. Really?
MIT, yeah.
I believe, I don't know his full career. He's teaching classes at Harvard now, but yeah, he's certainly in Cambridge, but he's been at many different universities. LSE claims him as one of their Nobel Prizes, though I don't think he was there that long. And he just does this wonderful work. He's a great example to me of an economist that is analytical and rigorous. He's got all these really structured ways of thinking about issues, but he has this deep underlying compassion to all of his work. Remembering when you study development economics, who are we studying, what are we studying, why is it important for people's lives? And so I always really enjoyed his work. And I never took his classes at Harvard, even though I was only an hour and a half south. And so I would love to go back and meet him when he was in the height of his publishing and just spend time talking to him about the field in general as well as the research he worked on. Maybe that shows I'm too much into economics. You give me the option of anybody since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And I picked an economist who's still alive.
Yeah.
So maybe that reflects poorly on me. Maybe I need to get a life.
No, it's alright. I've heard that you have a tattoo about economics. Is that true?
I don't think I do. Maybe. Maybe. I do have... Okay, so I have a series of small tattoos, which as I have gotten older, have become less cool. And I certainly don't feel they're as cool now as I felt when they were having them inked on my body. But I do have one. I have one here, which is a tiny little square, which is what you're supposed to put at the end of a mathematical proof. Mm-hmm. It's shorthand for QED, which is about as nerdy as it gets. And if you do high-end econ, you start working into proofs and stuff like that. So it came after a year of wrestling with a textbook called Mass Colel. Mm-hmm. And so I guess in a fever dream of microeconomic theory, I got that. So I guess I think that counts. But I certainly don't have supply and demand tattooed on myself yet.
Super interesting. So you also teach at the main campus of UFT. So which one is your favorite UFT campus?
So yeah, I have sadly never taught at the St. George campus, but I do live near there. And so I've never been out to Scarborough yet. For those of you know, I've only been at U of T for a year. I have a deep love of the UTM campus. I think not to open up conflict with the St. George campus, but I do prefer the U of T campus. I think it's smaller, it's tighter. I think there's more of a community here. There's something nice about kind of being we're sort of at the bottom of Mississauga, and this tight campus pushes us all together. And so I see lots of my students around all the time. I see students seeing each other they know all the time. And I've always equated it to be a little bit closer to the small colleges I really like in the U.S., which forces people into a smaller space and to be part of the community. U of T St. George has so many people coming in and out all the time. But I guess I'm qualified to say why I love UTM. I've never taught at UT St. George, so maybe they have a great community there. That, maybe everybody there is shaking their fists at me when I say this, but at least we have at UTM.
Yeah, I agree with you on that as well. In the main campus, it's all scattered around, but here it's so more united. You walk from one building to another, you bump into someone you know. So Absolutely. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. What's one country where you would live forever?
It might seem like I'm just past back here, but I'm really happy to be back in Canada. I studied at Western in 2011 was when I graduated from there, and then I left the country. I lived in a few other places, but I haven't lived in that many places. But I was really happy to be back, and so I think I do have a deep love for Canada. I do love living here. I enjoyed my time in the UK. I think I could live there again as well, but it didn't have the same place in my heart as Canada does.
Makes sense. I'm literally shaking because of the weather when I ask this question. If seasons never change, which one would you prefer to live in indefinitely?
It is a little chilly out here, but I do like the fall. I am a fall person through and through. Maybe it was the 6 years I spent in New England, so around Boston, very famously wonderful falls. And so I do like it. Summertime here is a bit sweaty for me. The winter doesn't quite do it for me. Spring's a little rainy, so if I have to pick, it's fall.
It's fall. You love the trees, leaves falling off.
Yeah, you know what it is? I just have a deep love for sweaters. I really, really like
Oh
sweaters.
yeah, I always see you wearing sweaters.
Yeah, I'm a big sweater fan, and so fall is like prime time for sweater wearing for sure.
Amazing. So now we're going to like the lifestyle category of questions. What is
Sure.
one expensive thing in your mind that is absolutely worth the money?
Yeah, that one's hard. I mean, I could give you like lame answers like life-saving medicine. And, okay, yeah, sure. But I think when I think about, at least for me, I've always thought a good holiday is almost always worth the money if you could swing it. Just because taking time off, work. It's sort of like you can work on your mental health in many ways, right? But giving yourself a break, finding a way to unplug, is always worth your time. And so it doesn't have to be a holiday. Holiday is what comes to mind to me because I really, really want one. But anything, hobbies, I think money spent on things that allow you to unplug are really important. I guess I also have to give the mandatory answer of I think education can be, education with purpose can be extremely transformative. And so if there's a place you want to be, a thing you want to do, a career you want to have, you are always it's not always going to have a positive return on your investment, but I think it is something worth spending your time and effort and money, resources on in trying to chase.
Makes sense. So it's vacation, education, and something that helps you pursue your passion.
Yeah, not in that order. That came out in an unfortunate order, but yes, yeah.
Because like a lot of international students, also domestic students, they come to university and then they spend a lot of money on like unnecessary things. So if they can kind of like get something out of this, like where they can spend money and not regret it. So I'm kind of like breaking that down for them, for the audience.
And I think sometimes you should just treat yourself. Sometimes if you want to go out and buy that super expensive pair of shoes, if you could swing it, and that brings you joy, just do it, right? The whole point of if you really want to earn money, the whole point about earning money is to do it so you can do the things you want to do, right? And so there are times to be responsible, and then, there are times to just enjoy yourself.
Amazing. What's one dish you cannot live without?
It's maybe compulsive. I love sushi, and I love sushi, and I'm not discerning about sushi at all. Okay, so I like good sushi. I will eat garbage sushi. I am just all over that. Partially because I grew up in Vancouver, I guess, and there's a lot of sushi in Vancouver, and so whenever I moved everywhere, I compulsively seek it out. In Toronto, I spent a lot of time trying sushi places, trying to find one that I like that had that mix of value. Ooh, Bloor has some good sushi places, and this is the thing. Elite sushi eaters will have no time for my hot take on this. I do not seek out discerning sushi, but I have enjoyed some of the sushi I've enjoyed on Bloor. I like actually a place called Sushi on Bloor, and it's great. And my wife has also confirmed that is good as well. Because once again, as I said, I will eat garbage sushi, so I'm not the one to ask, but she said she enjoyed it as well.
So I'm assuming your favorite cuisine is Japanese?
You see, I've never been to Japan, so certainly what I enjoy is the anglicized Japanese cuisine I have enjoyed. So I need to be careful. It's sort of like if you grow up in Texas and you love burritos, that doesn't necessarily mean you like
Have you ever
Mexican
tried
food.
Wagyu beef?
Never.
You know,
No,
like it
never.
literally melts in your mouth like butter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, there we go. Maybe I
Try
should
it
seek
out,
it
yeah.
out. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So the last part of the short question is
Mhm.
gonna be, it's inspired from this video from the main campus of UFT. Like professor was reacting to mean comments found on different websites like Reddit, Rate My Professor.
You know, I saw Bob Ghazali do that. So he
Yeah.
was very funny.
Mhm.
He was very, very funny.
So the first one, if you can take a look here, it says, "Oh, and if you don't pay attention for a few seconds on his lecture, I guarantee that you will be able to read his slides because of Aaron's magic." And it shows like a slide where you have drawn few diagrams, supply and demand curves.
Yeah, this is tough. Well, I certainly can't disagree with that. I mean, this is, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of writing on that slide. And I think that's one of the things I like. I wish I could say I was getting better. My handwriting is just awful. It's just really, really bad. And so, yeah, like if you're in my lectures, you certainly need to be paying attention to what I'm saying because, like, I struggle to draw parallel lines. I have never had artistic talent. And so, you know, sometimes in lecture, I take the moment to laugh at how bad what I have drawn just looks like. And I'm trying to get better, but I have a long journey to make. Um, yeah, like magic is a kind word for that. It might be closer to madness, but yeah, I can't argue with that.
But honestly, like I have been in your class, and the way you speak, the way you try to explain concepts, I think that kind of like covers up for your handwriting, because I just like when I just not take any notes and I just listen to you, everything makes sense. And
Right.
and over the summer, like when I was taking your courses, like my perception about university economics changed only because of you. So I gotta give it to you,
That's
Professor.
really good.
Yeah. Now we're
Yeah.
gonna move into the story questions. So could you tell us like a fun story that happened during one of your lectures at UTM or at Brown?
I have a good one. I have one that maybe. Yeah, this is always a dangerous question to ask. I have a good one for the summer, which I really enjoyed, which speaks a lot to the honesty of UTM students. We could call it honesty and integrity. We had a midterm that had to happen in lecture, and so in that lecture, I assigned a video for them to watch. And so I believe the midterm was on Tuesday, and so we came into the Thursday lecture, and I was like, "Okay, everyone, I want to know who watched the video, right? Because that video is quite foundational to what we're going to do this lecture. So, and can you just like put up your hands if you watched the video that I asked you to watch?" And like 1/3 of the hands went up. And I was like, oh. And what I was really struck by was just like almost the hilarious honesty of it. You're just like, guys, you could lie to me. Like, couldn't you just lie to me? Like, you know, if you all put up your hands, I would feel good and we could proceed. But yeah, so I always remember that. I enjoy the honesty of it. It's really laugh, and you know, it's you can't. I really enjoy the student body here, and I think sometimes you don't want to take yourself too seriously, right? So that was, you know, that was funny. It was like, okay, let's do a quick recap. Let's try and move in and bring both these lectures together. But yeah, that was a good memory. I told my wife about that one. Yeah, it was just fun. I do have one other. I had one other story, which maybe I will share as well, which was last year, our macroeconomics final. There was a student I knew quite well who came up to me and he was like, you know, Professor, I really, really hope you haven't given me a really, really hard final. Like, I hope this is a reasonable final. I was like, you know, you'll be fine. I think it's a reasonable final. Like, this is going to be great. You've worked hard. It'll be great. And then we get in and we're writing the final exams. And it's a big class. So we're in a gym. And I'm walking around, and I remember I just looked over. I was like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. And so I look over at the student, and he just like looks up to me and makes eye contact and just slowly shakes his head. And then in the back of my head, I was like, oh no, this is not worked out how I wanted it to. And so I'm always going to remember that.
That's one fun story, yeah. How did it feel when you were working as a country economist?
It's a lot of fun, and so. Yeah, the specifics of that job was I was based at the London School of Economics for maybe 2/3 of my time there, and so I worked supporting the Rwanda, Uganda, and I believe South Sudan programs. I think Myanmar for a while as well, under some really really wonderful country managers. The managers of those countries tend to be very late career economists who just were, in my experience, very kind people. And so I got to learn a lot. There was a lot of good mentorship there. But it was great. It was challenging. It taught me that a lot of the development economics questions we learn about are not as easy as I thought they were, because of the reality of the real world, right? So in economics, we sit down and we say, what could an optimal tax look like? And you solve out for this optimal tax. And in the real world, there's so much beyond the optimal tax. So much of it was about relationships with government and what was possible and what were the other considerations they had on. And so I was challenged a lot professionally, and just challenged a lot culturally. Working or studying in a country context which is not where you grew up is challenging, and it's a great opportunity for growth. It is not forgiving for people that are arrogant, but it is a great learning opportunity if you can learn humility, to realize that not everybody thinks about things the same way as you. People approach problems differently. People view things differently, and things you take for granted are not taken for granted by everybody else. And it's nice because it loops back to some conversations I've had with some of my students here. Speak to UTM being quite a multicultural, quite an international community. And I've talked to many students who have really enjoyed the sort of like perceived growth they've had through that as well. Roommates that are from the opposite side of the globe as them. They come from different backgrounds, from different countries, just with different interests, right? Like, we were talking about some of our interests before this, before we began filming. And it's always fun and interesting to learn what makes other people tick and what they enjoy. And so I think that was one of the best things. It was professional growth, but these I think, social, personal growth was strong, I hope.
Amazing. So the last segment, could you give us like 5 tips or advice to not just economic students, but just like university students so that they can succeed?
5. Okay, you'll have to keep track and we'll make sure I get 5. Okay, I guess the first is just go to all your classes and tutorials and just do the homeworks.
Simple.
Yeah, and it seems simple, but I want to give a story about some of my roommates. So I lived in a house of 6 people when I was in my undergrad, and one of my roommates, a few of mine didn't finish. One of my roommates didn't finish, and in the silver lining of the COVID pandemic for him, he had the opportunity to go back to school. And he'd always kind of struggled with getting his assignments in and all this stuff. And when he went back to school now in his 30s, and he was taking these undergraduate classes, he realized it was so easy for me. He was like, I just did what they told me to do. He's like, I did the assignments, I handed it in on the due date. When they told me to do the readings, I just sat down for half an hour and I did the readings, took notes, and I went to class, and he crushed every class he took. And he's like, I wish I'd approached school like this when I was an undergrad. Because I think I learned that pretty early on in my undergrad, and I did not have to work a lot. I was putting 20 hours a week into my schooling, tops, including all my studying, all my lecture attendance, all my homeworks. And the reason that was possible was because I was doing the thing that the instructors told me to do. This is what you have to learn. Go learn it, do the homework, and then you have time for other stuff. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is get involved, right? So one of the reasons why people like dorms is they meet people. But go to events, join clubs, meet people in your classes, meet people outside of your classes. Especially at UTM, it's such a social and small geographic community that if you just want to go to some club events, you should do it, right? I know the Center for Student Engagement has lots of stuff. Last Friday, I was part of a scavenger hunt with a bunch of students with them. And it was great, people are meeting new people, and, you might just meet some friends that end up at your wedding 10 years from now. If that's your thing. So I think that would be really important. A third thing, and I've said it a couple times, would be treat your mental health as a resource. Invest in it, because it will reap rewards for you, not just in happiness, but in your school performance. Okay, and so what do I mean? Have you ever tried writing a test tired? You ever tried writing a test hungry? right? You can't think, right? And so you could write a test, and if you have gotten extremely lucky and you've memorized how to do everything, then you just regurgitate down the page and you've done. But that's never been a test for me. There will be stuff you don't know, there will be stuff you don't remember, and the only way to get through that stuff is to fire up your brain and work through it. And if you want to use that brain when you're in that exam, you got to use it quickly and you got to use it efficiently, which means it needs to be at peak performance. And so what that means is, like, I learned pretty early on, I would not study for an exam the night before the exam. I would go for a walk, I'd watch a show, maybe I would review a little bit, but no hard study, because you don't want to strain your brain. It's your muscles. Like if you're an athlete, don't go run 100K the day before you have a game, right? But your brain's a muscle. I don't think your brain is technically a muscle, but treat it like a muscle. And it's good. I mean, your mental health is important for all aspects of life. But this is to say, be thoughtful about that and thoughtful about how that will affect your exam performance, because I am afraid that a lot of people study really, really hard as a way to alleviate their anxiety, to manage the fact that they feel worried about an exam. One way to manage that is to just study over and over and over. But you want to be really cognizant. What is the return to that hour of studying? Are you gaining anything from this? Or are you so tired that you're reading the same paragraph over and over? Okay, that's 3. It's getting harder. But hey, okay, I got a 4th. Great. Read, right? Read for fun. Okay, like spend time, like take classes, try and find an interest, right? And then try and build an expertise in your interest. Okay, I got very lucky. I really enjoyed economics. And so I found a class I really enjoyed. I read about it, and that is easy, right? But not everybody's going to find their passion in a class, but find a passion in something, right? Think about something you enjoy. And then read on it. Spend time learning about it. And be discerning about sources, right? So this is becoming a bigger problem in our world, right? Is that people getting their news from Facebook and stuff like this. Like, you could read stuff you enjoy on Facebook. I still do read articles on Facebook, but start to be a bit more rigorous in what we read. Think about sources. Find sources that you trust and learn from those. Because part of the art of college is not just learning, it's about learning to learn, right? And so figuring out how to pursue an interest in a subject, how to gain expertise. And it doesn't, if you really, I guess I'll do the most Canadian example of the world. If you really, really love ice hockey, that's great, right? And so get academic about it while you're here. Don't just watch the game. Start reading on it. Read on the theory of it. Read how the stats work, right? Spend your time. And, you will learn. You will gain benefits from that, right? You will gain analytical thought. And so I think that's really, really important. The other thing, I guess number 5, which is going to be me speaking a lot about something I don't necessarily know a lot about. And the reality for that is that the job market when I graduated, so I guess I'll date myself. I graduated from my undergrad in 2011 and my master's in 2012, so it's only 10 years since then. It has drastically changed in the sense of how competitive it is for graduates now. And so my final piece of advice, I think, would be it is important to start being mindful about what you might want to do after college. And you need to start thinking about it earlier than you used to. And be strategic for that. Now, this will depend a little bit about what your major is, right? Like, if you are here to do commerce or to become a scientist or this sort of thing, then you need to start being strategic. If you are here to pursue a level of learning, right, you should still be strategic. I just mean that, not everybody is coming to college to get a job. That's fine. But if you are here with certain jobs in mind, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, maybe, you want to be a banker, all this sort of stuff, you want to start being strategic and thoughtful. And so I would say don't just look to what your resume will look like. Look to what your interview will look like. Okay? You could be parts of tons of clubs, you could be parts of organizations, and that is important, right? And that will help you, take the right classes, that will get you past the screening. But one day, shortly, you want to have, and you want to make sure that not only you have taken the classes, but you have developed the actual knowledge you need to speak intelligently about the topics you need to speak about to get that job, right? And so one of the things this means, especially in your 3rd and 4th years, don't start taking upper year topics classes because it fits into your schedule. don't take, for example, monetary economics. That's how central banks work. Don't take monetary economics because it is a Tuesday 3 to 5 class. And if you do that, you can get Fridays off. You can appreciate having Fridays off. That is fun, but it is only worth taking to you if it is knowledge you want to have and knowledge you think you can find useful. And so just crushing your GPA is one thing you need to do, but that'll only get you in the door. And when you're in that door, you need to actually be able to speak intelligently about what you want to do. And, this is not just me preaching. When I was finishing my master's, I thought I would quite like to be a banker, got a bunch of banking interviews, and then in my first interviews discovered that I know very little about banking. And not only did I discover it, the interviewees discovered it. And if you do a careful reading of my LinkedIn, you will see there was no banking on there. And so that's my advice. I think that's 5, right? 5 long-winded ones, so I apologize for everyone listening.
So these are all golden advices coming from Professor Aaron, and I can personally relate with the one about mental health. Like, I was literally in his office hour before one of my econ final exams, and I was stressing a lot about my exam, and he just told me to go home, get 8 hours of sleep, get a heavy breakfast, and go to the exam hall. And I exactly did that, and I got the grade I wanted. So these are all golden advices from Professor Aaron. Professor Aaron, it's been a pleasure having you on the first episode of the Humans of UEC. Thank you very much for your time and patience.
It's always good to see you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Professor, this is a token of appreciation from our team. Thank you so much for your time and patience.
It's so kind of you. Thank you. I'm always happy to work with the UEC.
Guys, I hope you liked the episode. Let us know in the comment section what you think. And let us know as well who you want next. Professor Bailey or Nick Zammit, let us know. I'll see you on the next episode.